Welcome, my Phoenix family! Advocating for yourself doesn't need to be so difficult. And to prove it, I have a personal story today about when I needed to advocate for myself and it actually worked. Alright, so if we start a little bit at the beginning, we start where I was 16 and didn't know at all that I had ADHD. So I had gone through my entire years of school up to that point having absolutely no idea that that's something that was actually really affecting my schooling. And I didn't know I had ADHD until I was tested for dyslexia. So it became important that I learned how to advocate for myself as I was older when I found out that I had ADHD and dyslexia, but also because when it came from me as the student, I was more likely to get the help that I needed. Now, during my time in public school, it was really difficult to get any of the help that I needed, even though I was working with my teachers and even though I was trying my best to get on a plan where I could have the accommodations I needed. And that was unfortunately just the nature of the school district where I went to school. However, when I did work with my teachers and when I worked with my mom as well about like, hey, maybe there's something we could put together that's easy for these teachers to use, but also that reminds them the kinds of things that might be helpful to me. And so we did. We worked together on putting together like a page, and it just had some simple suggestions for things that these teachers could do to try and help me in the classroom, because I was a kid that was struggling in school. Especially at that point, I realized that there probably was something going on. Like, I would study really hard, and then like when the test came, I could just completely blank and forget everything. There was some teachers that took to heart what we suggested that I needed more than others, but it did work in the sense that, you know, like my physics teacher decided to let like everybody have like a note card with the formulas on it to help you with the tests, because that was something that I had asked for with my dyslexia and with my difficulty with math. And then for English, I asked for audiobooks, and that wasn't really like all that hard to get. I didn't necessarily have like the audiobooks provided right to me, but I was able to get like any of the audiobooks I needed from like the library or from the school. Libraries sometimes had them, or sometimes my teacher was just able to find somewhere where I could get the audiobook for free, and if he could find a place where I could get it for free, he would just tell me where to find it. I also bought my own pen that reads aloud, and that was like incredibly helpful going through the rest of my time through high school. And then when I got to college, I continued to use that technology in conjunction with a technology for ebooks. And that is because a lot of my college degree I did online. But when advocating for myself really worked was when I went to college. Now, this was interesting because I didn't go to like a big public college per se. I went to a church school for college, and that's fine if that's like not your thing or not your jam. That's just where I chose to be and where I felt like I belonged. And so I was really kind of like worried about how am I going to get the accommodations I need when I go to college? Because obviously these college classes are going to be more strenuous than anything that I've really done before. So I submitted all of my paperwork, basically just like my diagnosis paperwork that said like I have ADHD, I have challenges with reading, and all sorts of things like that. And they sat me down in a room, basically had like a little interview with me, and were like, hey, you know, like what accommodations do you think would be helpful for you? And the guy like hands me this like whole list of things that they could possibly do for me. And I was just like, whoa, you mean like I don't have to fight really hard to get this? Like I just need to tell you that I have a disability? Like, wow, And normally advocating for yourself is going to be more of an involvement than it is for that. But they sat me down and they're like, okay, like you have dyslexia, you have ADHD, what do you think would be helpful? And I was like, well, I need extra time on testing and I need like my own room for testing because I would get kind of like this really bad test anxiety. Like when everybody would like finish the test before me, I would kind of be like, oh no, like did I like study enough? And it would just like play tricks on my mind. So I was really grateful for that. And then the other reason to have a private testing room was so that I could have someone like read the test to me. And with dyslexia, that is so important, especially because it's super easy to mix up just like a few words and then totally get the question wrong because you just mixed up a few words, not necessarily because you didn't study. One of the other things that I was able to get was if I needed to request extra time for an assignment, like occasionally, I was able to do that. Of course, that accommodation could be misused. And I understand where some teachers and professors might have some hesitancy with that because they could be like, well, if you just like procrastinated, like, you know, but a lot of times, even if I did procrastinate, it wasn't necessarily my fault. It was just, that's how ADHD works. But most of the time when I needed to ask for extra time, it was truly because of my chronic pain. And that really came into play the later I got into college and then after that first semester of college where the chronic pain was really becoming an issue. So I think one of the most important things in advocating for yourself is just knowing like what kind of things could help your disability and then not being afraid to ask for those things. Like, for example, I know that it's important for me to be able to drive in the mornings. And recently I've had to really like advocate with my doctor being like, hey, you know, like my pain is so bad, like on a certain medication that I can't even drive in the morning and I really need to have that independence. And so, you know, we made some changes and hopefully I get feeling better in the next little bit, but it has been kind of a rough and wild ride for the last like month or so with the chronic pain. If this video helped you or if you enjoyed it and you would like to learn more about self-advocacy and how you can use self-advocacy with chronic pain, I invite you to click over here and watch the next video. Thank you so much for being a part of the Phoenix family and watching today's video.